Kia ora koutou. It is my privilege to be here with Emma Ferris. Now, Emma's name has popped up. When you mention breathing, Emma's name pops up. And so it is really wonderful to have her on our network today. Emma, welcome.
Kia ora. Thank you for having me on to talk about breathing. It's something I'm very passionate about, and I know that you are too.
Yeah, well, absolutely. For us, it's pretty critical. Well, for every
Yep.
human, it's pretty critical. And I guess that's probably my first question. Given that breathing is something that we all have to do, how did you get into it? And more importantly, how have you made a business out of breathing?
Well, I'm a physio, so that's my background. But I actually learned to breathe when I was, learned to change my breathing habits when I was 13. And I struggled with a speech impediment and a stutter. And so for me, learning to do speech and drama training was the first time that I actually realized that I wasn't doing it right. And a lot of things were actually being impacted by my poor breathing. But it wasn't really clear then the link with all the other stuff. So it ended up being that breathing and learning to change the way that I breathe kept coming up in my life, from my physio training, from Pilates, from being an acupuncturist, and really looking at the nervous system link. And then particularly in the last few years as a physio, kind of getting really frustrated actually that so many of my patients, I was not able to look at this big picture for them because we weren't really given the link between stress and the impact that it has on the body. And so when I was diving deep into the research and looking at it from this more holistic view, there was a really key element that was missing in a lot of both the training that we did and also the way that we look at it medically. And that was the way that we breathe, which is the catalyst between the stress reaction, breathing, and how the body reacts. And so I was like, I got to make some power in here because I can use this tool and then help link these pieces together so that people can see that they can have some control over it, which is for me the most important, because I don't want to keep fixing everybody. I love helping people, but I want them to take power back. So that's my journey to breathing. Plus my own, I have had some really big moments along the way with stress and trauma experiences that really kept defining this role of breath coach. It's hard to kind of define it. It's just this awareness of how much it impacts so many areas of our life. And so that's why I've gone, nope, this has to be shared in a bigger way.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say yes. You know, I'm picking up on the stress comment from you because I'm going to say stress for so many of our community, they really underestimate the impact of stress as a trigger for asthma, and you know, it's just something that I think we try and work with in a very, very uneducated and ill-informed way. We really have been trained well on how to manage it. So I guess, you know, with that then, Emma, what have been some of the things that you've been really surprised to learn as you've gone through this?
I think one of the biggest ones, and that's kind of pushed my trajectory in looking at it from not just a breath point of view, but as the psychology and the emotions and how the body reacts, is understanding how much trauma has an effect on the body. And there was actually a Dunedin study, I'm not sure if you looked at that one, but that showed the link between trauma and early childhood. And the Dunedin study was done in Dunedin years and years and years ago, and it looked at all these children born at the same time, and then they followed them over the years, and they found this link, and I'm pretty sure it was between asthma and breathing dysfunction between early childhood trauma. And so that was one of the pieces I went, right, it's a catalyst into how our body reacts, and again, how we react to stress. But actually one of the ones that really changed it for me was research done by a guy called Pierre Philpott. I'm not sure if you know about this guy, but he was based in Canada and looked at the emotions and how they link with our breathing pattern. So what they found was that our emotions that we all have them. He particularly looked at 4 different emotions, and nobody had asthma, nobody had breathing dysfunction, but one group he looked at, or he explained to people, can you think of sadness, joy, fear, and anger? And then he looked at the breathing pattern that was taken on. And he found that each emotion had a separate breathing pattern, not a one-size-fits-all model.
Wow.
And so the sadness breathing was that kind of slumped down posture, which again, we talk about the emotions linking through with how we breathe. Anger breathing is gripping around the obliques and holding and bracing. fear and anxiety breathing, which I see so much of clinically because of that stress reaction, is that inhale, upper chest breathing. And then the joy breathing is what we try and teach people, which is the belly breathing, and get them to deflate and look at that holistic breathing pattern. So that was one part of the research, seeing how the emotions changed our breathing pattern. But the bit that changed it for me was the other group, when he said, breathe in those 4 breathing patterns, and what emotion do you feel? And it was either joy, sadness, fear, or anger, depending on the breathing pattern. So what it shows me is we do have control with up here, our top-down control, but we have control with bottom up. So if we can change our breathing pattern, we can change our physiology, our emotions, our stress reaction, which is driving us, like you were saying about understanding the triggers. And so that for me was like a huge defining moment when I was like, people don't understand we have more power to change our body reactions than they realize.
Emma, that's, such powerful insight there. We know when we go into our junior schools and we're asking our young people, in fact, even the senior schools that we work in, and we ask our young people to breathe and do breathing exercises with us, all we see is this. They're breathing up through the chest, and they're trying their hardest to breathe really well. They want a gold star. And it's like, oh my goodness gracious, and then we'll ask them, what do you do when you get stressed? They'll be like, oh, miss, we should breathe. And it's like, wow, yes, you should, but we're breathing all wrong.
Yeah.
And so, Emma, what are some of the things, what are some of the tips that you give people when when you start working with them?
I think for me, it's about them understanding their own breathing pattern, because unfortunately, it's not a one-size-fits-all model. I wish it was, because it'd make it easier when we teach this and go, okay, you're going to do in for 3, out for 6, and that's going to be how you breathe forever. So a lot of it's about identifying their own pattern and seeing it. So my job really is to hold a mirror up for people. So they can see, are they breathing more in that fear and anxiety breathing? Majority of people are. So a lot of the time I'm getting them to actually deflate and drop the chest down, so that the diaphragm, that main breathing muscle, goes from being elevated and flattened into the right position. So I guess for me, it's about the education for the why. Because if people don't understand how breathing influences so many other aspects, then they're not going to make a difference in their lives. So it's so good what you're talking about there with the kids seeing it. And I think there's more awareness in that. I go to speak in schools. I'm going down to a school in South Island in June and doing workshops down there at the kids. But I'm also doing it in the community. So it's going with everybody so they can understand, actually, we have power to influence it. So I feel like my piece is not just about the breathing exercises, it's the why, the connection between when we're going to get upset and triggered, why our body reacts this way, and how you can make yourself feel safe. So that's the other piece that's been a big learning curve for me, is that really what breathing does is it teaches the nervous system and our body that we're safe. And many times our body's been triggered to this other unsafe trauma state, which is all the nervous system reaction. And so safety comes in lots of different forms, but breathing is one of the best ways to do that.
Yeah. Look, this is so incredibly powerful, because, if we think about think about the environment that we're all living in now, it is so uncertain. It is, in some respects, it's so unsafe because of the uncertainty. And so we're living in this heightened state of anxiety and fear. And, we see that across the community, and certainly I think we can really start to see, and my fear is that we're going to start to see this manifest in even more health conditions, and the depth of the health conditions, I think, are going to get more complex if we can't manage some of the most basic elements. And there's nothing more basic than breathing.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it there. And unfortunately, in many ways, our medical system isn't set up to look at the way that people manage their habits and their daily lives, the psychology and the stress of that. That's what we do still in all around the world, is with the ambulance at the bottom waiting to fix it when the wheels fall off. But when the wheels fall off, your body has already gone through so much, and the alarm has been ringing and we're not listening. And so the problem when it becomes with stress is that it impacts so many parts of our nervous system, including our lungs, and that's why asthma is a big trigger from stress. And so that's one way the body responds to it. But I think what you're saying is so important, is that we're going to have even more conditions. But the things that I see, insomnia, fatigue, gut health issues is huge in our country and around the world. And that is a huge component to do with stress. Headaches, back pain, neck pain, all these things that I treat all the time in the clinic as a physio, but are actually linked into the catalyst, which is stress. And so if we can change the conversation about that, I think that's going to have a really big impact into how we as a medical society shift that. And it's grassroots stuff like this which makes a difference.
Yeah, Emma, there's so much in this conversation, and I'm aware that, you know, we have such a limited time today. I feel that it's something that we really need to pick up on and do a lot more, have a lot more of these conversations, because, you know, I think the thing for us that we're so aware of, and a lot of people aren't aware of this, is that you can get asthma at any age.
Yes.
And we're seeing a lot of people in their 40s and 50s being diagnosed with asthma. And they're like, well, no, it's not asthma. It can't be asthma because I did have asthma as a kid. And, you know, I wasn't born with asthma. No, you weren't. However, asthma can show up because it's, as you say, it's one more response mechanism of the body trying to stop that shouldn't be going into the body, getting into it. And so, Emma, look, you know, this is so invaluable, and I think, you know, to everybody listening, I know that you've probably got a heck of a lot of questions right now that you'd love to be firing at Emma. One of the things that we had a conversation before we came on this live session today was about doing some real live podcasts, some real live interviews, so that you can ask questions of Emma. Emma, thank you so much for your time today. In this short period of time, I think the information that you've relayed is so incredibly powerful, and it is we need to start taking awareness of this, because our health is not improving. You know, we're living in some of the most luxurious times, but the unhealthiest times of all generations gone by. So, Emma, thank you. It's a real privilege to have you on, and the work that you're doing makes such a difference.
Thank you.
Ka kite anō, everybody. We'll be back in touch soon. Really looking forward to bringing the next episode with Emma.